Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We, of course, are a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by PrizePicks. Joining me today, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, you're back. How are you?
I'm back. Doing well. Better than the Kings, it seems. That was kind of unnecessary, just record-wise recently. I'm sure the guys are doing all right.
Brendan's saying he's not 0-4 over the last week. Good for you,
I've had
Brenden.
some wins here and there.
All right. And, of course,
what
joining us.
Well, I'll talk to you later, Sean.
Okay. All right.
Okay, joining us as well is Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Fantastic as always.
Fair to middling.
For the most part, I'd say. Yeah, I can. There's probably things I could pick apart, but everyone's got little things going on. I do not. I am actually doing fantastic. So good to see your smiling faces, and can't wait to talk about the incredible state of Kings basketball.
Yeah, we went from
the candle. How about that? Look at that.
Oh yeah. What do we got?
Hold on,
yeah,
audio listener. As Brenden
we can't already start talking about basketball, guys.
No, that wasn't going to happen anyway.
We're back to the vanilla and warm tobacco. This is probably very at the end of it, but this is one of my favorites, and it makes me think of James' grandpa.
There it is.
Careful. Is it a single wick? Is it a single wick or is it a double? Oh, see, mine is a this is hot. But this is a triple one. I went with the mahogany balsam. It's a scented candle made with natural essential oils. Mahogany balsam. So it smells fantastic.
Like Sean said, balsam.
Okay.
Balsam. Do you know what balsam is? B-A-L-S. I can't see it. B-A-L-S-A-M. Balsam. Not like balsa wood. James is laughing at my
ridiculous. What has happened here?
Well, come on. This is James. Where's your candle, huh?
I've told you. Sometimes I light a candle. Sometimes I don't. Like, I don't know. I think I have one in here somewhere. It's not lit.
Turn you.
It's not.
Oh, it's always lit.
A candle guy. Wow. Okay, let's get to some of the business side. If you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel so you get like a little notification every time we go live. We have not done a live show maybe in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We will get back to live shows here eventually.
Like 2 months.
Been a little while.
Oh, I don't know. Every day runs in together at this point. I don't know about you guys. It's been a little wild. The wild west out there. We are sponsored by PrizePicks. So I would just tell you today is one of those days where it's like Flex Friday. You can go in, you can check out a couple of options, and a lot of times you're the money that you're putting up is secured, and that way you can make a couple of plays here and a couple of flex plays and have a good time. I think this weekend is going to be crazy with all the NFL games. Maybe mix and match some NFL with a little Kings basketball on Monday. I'm not sure that I would like really feel safe with anything that's going on with the Sacramento Kings at this point. So
how many dunks did Keegan have last game though? Like 4 or 5?
I think he had 5 or 6.
Yeah.
The first one, they didn't give us a dunk because it was considered a layup, even though it sure did look like he dunked it. But then he went on to have like a whole bunch of dunks. That for me has been my favorite play all season long. I choose more on dunks for Keegan Murray. It's usually 0.5 dunks, so all he needs is 1. And then we celebrate every time he gets his 1 dunk, which, to be honest with you, Keegan Murray is all of a sudden becoming a dunk machine, which is cool. So jump on board with PrizePicks if you so choose. There is a link down below in the description. The password is KINGSBEAT, all one word. And I think that gets you a matching up to a certain dollar amount. So check that out. Again, this is going to be a fun weekend. You can look at all kinds of different options with the 49ers playing. Who are they playing this with? The Packers, or what do we got? The Lions and Tampa Bay, and then a bunch of crazy AFC games. That Buffalo Chiefs game is going to be wild, and I'm all here to see if CJ Stroud can take down the Ravens. But there should be a lot of fun prize pick stuff to go look at. Let's get to the basketball. Well, let's get to news before basketball. How about that? As we were prepping for the show to come on today,
Do we prep?
No.
As we were 2 minutes
prep.
before, that's plenty of prep, Sean.
As we were acting like we were gonna prep for the show and trying to get ready to get on the show and kept pushing the show back, news broke that Anjali Ranadive has stepped down as the general manager of the Stockton Kings, and this comes at a very odd time. Team is playing well. They just keep acquiring veterans, and there seemed to be a path where this team was really trying to push to win something this year, and then all of a sudden it ends out of nowhere. So what do you guys got here? Because I know, Brenden, you go to a whole hell of a lot more Stockton Kings games than I do because I go to none. And Sean, I know that you visit down there quite often with even if it's going to the practice facility or whatever, and you know a little bit about what's happening. But this is kind of a stunner that came out of left field.
Yeah,
I mean, okay. Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't know
she was just promoted, me either, in June 2023, so this is a pretty quick turnaround, obviously. And, I'll just finish the rest of the press release. She says that they say that she plans to pursue her PhD and focus her attention on her nonprofit, which is Jaws and Paws. And, I think that the team that they acquired and have acquired throughout the last season is interesting. It's a lot of previous NBA guys. There's actually kind of a ridiculous amount. There's Jalen Noel, Scalabissier, Mason Jones, Jeremy Lamb, Stanley Johnson, Deontay Burton. They just got Shabazz Muhammad. Obviously still had the two ways over there, except Keon. Kobe had been playing a lot. So they have an interesting team that definitely has led to success so far this season. They're 8-2. And yeah, her stepping down is seemingly kind of out of nowhere. And Sean, if you have anything else, my next question is, who's Gabriel Harris? Not to be, that came off as a little disrespectful. I just am unaware, to be honest.
Yeah, I think first of all, I don't really know the part about I was down there recently, their last home game over the Long Island Nets, I think is what they're called. They lost that game. Scalabissier had a phenomenal game. I was down there. I've been down there the past few games in Stockton at Golden One, and then in Stockton because I'm doing a story with Stanley Johnson coming up. I sat down with him, and we'll be able to. I'll have that interview probably early, either over the weekend or early next week. But really enjoyable interview, and she had been at both games. She was not at the final game. Noticeably absent, and of course, looking around, usually see Kings brass there. Phil Jabbour, usually a mainstay. Paul Johnson, who was the GM before Anjali Ranadive and served as GM with Anjali as his assistant GM before she was promoted. He still obviously serves an important role within the Sacramento Kings organization. He was down there with his kids and also Alvin Gentry. So that was a game that Colby Jones, Slausson's been down there pretty consistently, but Colby was playing as well. And he did, I think that her absence was a little bit noticeable, but, didn't really think too much of it. And yeah, I think it does kind of come out of the blue. It's just to me, it's a tough thing because look, like in every corporate landscape.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Oh, okay. I know people might poke fun and because nepotism, which exists in every corporate landscape, and when I broke the story of her becoming a general manager and stepping into that role, of being the assistant GM, that there would be a lot of pushback, and I wanted to make sure that we pointed out that no, there's a lot of owners, children, and family members that are in these types of roles, and she was no different from that. But it is odd that, you take the elevated stance, and in less than a year taking the elevated stance of general manager, and then going in less than a year realizing that maybe this isn't what you want to do. So kudos to her for at least being able to make that decision and having the thick skin to kind of go through what comes with that. But onward, I guess. They're fun. If you're a basketball fan, you're going and you're seeing a lot of recognizable names at the Stockton Kings level, and as Brenden pointed out, they're having a nice record. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to do something, don't do it. And so she's going to go follow a different passion.
Yeah. So really quickly, Gabriel Harris, the assistant, he was the assistant general manager with the Stockton Kings, got hired in October 2023, spent the last 4 months as the assistant GM. Before that, almost 9 years as Adidas, director of product marketing, basketball footwear. He's a Stanford grad from 2014, 2000, or Stanford. He went to Stanford. No, he does have a master's degree in communications and media studies from Stanford. And
I'll say one thing too, James, real quick. He had been a very noticeable presence with Anjali at every game. I mean, they were pretty much attached at the hip. So when I say I don't really know much of his background, but certainly, as you're pointing out, but I want to point out that before I forget, he definitely is a very visual presence at every game and practice.
I've definitely seen him play too.
He went to MIT, has an applied science program degree from like 2023. So he's a smart dude. So again, I don't know him. But I would say this too about the nepotism thing that you said, Sean. Look, everyone out there knows I have boys, right? I have 2 boys, one's 20, one's 16. If I won like the jumbo lottery and ended up being a professional sports franchise owner tomorrow, my son would be there alongside me every single step of the way. Not both of them, because one of them doesn't have any interest in sports, but my oldest he'd be with me every day. My only concern, or just the way that this thing happened with her, where she went straight to the business side with the Kings for like 6 months or a year, and then jumped right into an assistant GM job. I just think it from the outside, it set her up for failure. If she could have had sort of a smaller title to start out, where a basketball intern, front office intern, whatever, and sort of was able to quietly grow what she's doing, I think it would have been a lot less glaring. And so again, I just think, again, I don't have any problems with Vivek. Isn't going to live forever, and his kids are going to be major pieces to what the Kings do moving forward. And so I'm fine with it. Again, nepotism is a thing that's out there everywhere, but also it's part of a family business. The Kings are a Vivek Ranadive family business. And I just, would like to see that the way that people are promoted and the way that they get to the positions that they get to are sort of right for them and right for the way that the organization is growing and building. And so this is it's a weird situation afterwards, but I don't know, we move forward, right? We now have yeah.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's what the G League is for. It's for development of all these different levels, and you could argue whether or not someone was ready for that type of thing. But like you said, I mean, it's development is at the key core of everything that the G League represents, be it a player, broadcaster, media relations, trainer, coach, all that stuff. So why would the front office be any different?
Yeah, no, I get you. Let's move on. We've got the Sacramento Kings are on a 4-game losing streak. Their first 4-game losing streak since the first 4 games of the 2022-23 season. They had done a really good job of avoiding sort of this pitfall here that we're seeing overwhelm them at this point. One of those losses was to the Philadelphia 76ers, which was a blowout, and just not a good game at all. It's been typical for this team to have games like this where they fail to show up. But then the other 3 games, you could argue maybe the Indiana game wasn't nearly as close as it ended up being. But the other 2 games I thought were really, really good games where the Kings just lost. And I just want you guys, Sean, we'll start with you. Like the overall perspective on the 4-game losing streak and the way that we got to where we are, because it doesn't feel like the team is playing horribly, but they can't shoot free throws for some reason. And there's just like a little bit of something's off. Something's weird. Something's different. Something's off with this team right now. And I think it's sort of playing out on the court more than I would have expected.
Yeah, man. They've got a lot of a different vibe around this team, where it's like a cloud, and to your point, like they showed stretches, and Domantas Sabonis said it, where thinking that moments that they played are among some of the best basketball they played all season, but then you suffer these self-inflicted wounds, and they hang on this team, and it can really disrupt some of that positive momentum that they have. And what's wild, and I think this has kind of been a theme over the past few podcasts when we talk about the shortcomings of the Kings or the problems that are similar to the problems they had last year. But look, through 41 games now, you're 23-18, and it's the exact same record as you had last season, which felt remarkably different. And it's what you were experiencing for the first time. And I would argue, and I think Mike Brown would kind of touch on this a little bit in his post-game press conference following the Indiana game, which is like the whole going from good to great and not catching teams from by surprise, and all these little kind of catchphrases that have been known to come into the season with, like, you're going from being the hunters to the hunted. They all ring true. Like, you look at some of these games, you've lost. I'm talking about the Kings. They've lost to a lot of lower echelon opponents, and some of the upper echelon opponents are giving a really good shot at, but they're haven't been able to really punch through in some of those games. The problem is they've got so many bad losses. You couple that with someone like Golden State, for example, who everyone's wondering, like, I always kind of loop them into the mix of Sacramento, Phoenix, who's kind of figuring it out now. Some of these teams where you're like, we don't quite know where they are. Have they shown their best? Are they going to be this question mark? But they're all kind of jumbled up there in the Western Conference standings. And one of the big differences that sticks out like a sore thumb with Golden State is they don't have losses to really lower teams. Now, I'm saying that as they just lost to a really depleted Memphis Grizzlies team. But if you go through their entire losses, all the other losses, they're all to pretty solid teams. They don't have losses to a lot of these lower level teams. The Kings do, and that's ultimately pretty alarming. And it's early in the season to where you'd always people want to say, hey, you want to face adversity earlier rather than later and see how you grow from it. And Mike Brown has talked about wanting to see how his team grows from it. The fact of the matter is, I think they have so many issues at hand right now that it's trickling into the obviously the basketball portion. I think there's a great many things that hang on this team, but I think the biggest thing is one win can go a long way. And I think Domantas Sabonis said it best. I mean, you think about how people were feeling after dropping 2 in Houston, and then you go on a 6-game win streak. People were flying high, and the Kings just haven't had that win streak really this season outside of that 6 games. So if they can find one of those and prolong it and turn a 4-game skid into, winning 8 of 10, like some of these teams have experienced already this season, that might correct a lot of things, but you might have to get through the trade deadline first.
Yeah.
They won 4 of 5 right before they lost these 4, and some of them were ugly. They beat the Hornets pretty convincingly and the Pistons, and that's what you're supposed to do, but a sketchy game against the Raptors and Magic in there as well, and obviously the horrible Pelicans loss mixed in the middle really kind of puts a damper on the 4 of 5 and makes it easier for people to focus on the 1. But I mean, I agree with most of what Sean just said. It's like you look at that Milwaukee game, and I thought they were playing some of the best offense that we've seen all year. Really, they looked like the Kings of last year. The pace was there. If I'm remembering right, I think that Kevin Huerter did well in that one and has been playing well recently. and had a good game, actually a career high against the Pacers last night, but obviously couldn't really feel great about it given that it was in a loss. But I thought their offense was phenomenal. And then down the stretch, Mike Brown gets ejected in pretty funny fashion in my mind. Very similar to Toronto of last year, just storming the court at seemingly a random moment. And it was about all the lead up to it, obviously. But I thought they were playing great offense.
Brenden, on that note, I think he's very lucky he didn't get suspended. Like, because when he stormed the court, the play was still going on, and he actually he ran into Pat Connaughton, and that, to me, it was like one of those moments where, like, whoa, that could be that could be more than a fine. That could be a suspension for making contact with another player. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and he got 25,000 last year, and Darko Rajokovic, I hope I'm saying your last name right, got 25 as well for pretty much saying, do the league want the Lakers to win or what? And Mike Brown got 50 in my mind because of the on-court stuff and the post-game stuff. I would imagine and assume that it's 25 for each there. But yeah, I mean, I think that they played amazing offense in that Bucks game. Some of the best their offenses looked all year. And then down the stretch, obviously missed some big free throws, and seeing Malik Monk be the one to miss them, I think, is really just shocking, considering that he's been far and away their best free throw shooter and been a great free throw shooter for most of his career, really. And then, you don't double Damian Lillard at the end of the game. Like Mike Brown said, that probably should have been the way to go about it. And you end up losing that one in overtime to a team with two great players. Phoenix, Mike Brown said the first 40 minutes of that game, probably the best defense they've played since he's been in Sacramento. And then just a total collapse really on the offensive end with a ridiculous amount of turnovers that lead to easy points for Phoenix on the other side. Phoenix goes small, and maybe that kind of played a part a bit there. But I thought those two games, I left feeling like there was a lot of positives, really, and just late game collapses, and then was optimistic about the Indiana game. And that was definitely a tough one. It was kind of an accumulation of all the different little random issues they've had, whether there's a game where turnovers look really bad, or their offense looks out of whack, or maybe their defensive rotations are just a little weird, or TJ McConnell all of a sudden is the fastest player in the NBA, even though he shoots, by the way, 6% from three. And, so it was just kind of everything at once, it felt like, in that Indiana game. The free throws obviously being the biggest thing there as well. But more often than not, I feel like it's just been one thing here or there, pick between these four issues that we've seen throughout the course of the year, which one was the issue in that loss. But there still have been a lot of positives, but I understand the fan base being agitated and focusing on some of these more jarring issues that we've seen recently, and led to two late game collapses and a bad game against the Pacers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I said this early in the season, it sure does feel like anytime that you see them start missing free throws early, those are the games where they get just crushed. And it's been a trend like the whole time. You can see there's like some sort of weird disconnect, or the like mental focus isn't there, and you can see it. They start missing free throws early in a game, and then next thing you know, you look up and it's an 18-point game, or it's a 12-point game, and they're not playing well. And it's not just on the free throw shootings. The free throw shooting seems to be a symptom for a much larger issue. And I don't know what that larger issue is, but it just shows up in a weird way, which is free throw shooting. And I think you can go back to almost every single one of their big blowout losses, and free throw shooting was a major issue early in the game. So I don't know what to say. Like, this team feels like they're off. There is, like Sean said, it's like they got a little Charlie Brown, like rain clouds. It just follows them around a little bit. They just feel like something is wrong, right?
It feels like it's almost, I don't even think it's that. I think it's Pigpen. Like, it's unclean. Like, it's just
unclean.
It's unclean and filthy. It's not a cloud so much as it is just a funk. Like, it's gross. It's a stink. It's a stench. It's foul. Something's rotten in Denmark. I'm using all of them. Like, that's what it feels like.
I think we could probably break them down using just Peanuts characters, and Brennan would have no idea what we were talking about at all.
Who's Peppermint Patty then?
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question.
I'm muted the whole time.
Jesus. All right.
I know
Yeah,
Charlie
good for
Brown. I'm
Brenden.
pretty sure Cindy's the one that pulls the football, and
Charlie Brown, Brenden
Lucy.
is. Oh, he knows.
yeah, that's all I got.
Lucy pulls the football.
Oh, that's what I said. That's what I said.
It's not Cindy's.
Cindy's the one that lets us
Cindy.
into the locker room.
Cindy is the security guard on the way to the locker room. Shirley lets us in the locker room.
Surely lets us.
Yes.
Surely must
Surely
be.
lets
Sued.
us in.
Also pretty sure that Snoop Dogg has said his name is inspired by what is the
Snoopy?
dog? Why am I? Thank you.
Jesus Christ, man!
I couldn't
See?
think of it. I was
knew
right
this
there.
was going to be a
I was
problem.
right there.
The youth of tomorrow is just absolutely. I mean, you're an
Man.
adult.
Ask me
Allegedly.
SpongeBob questions.
Brendan's never going to even know what it's like to buy a small Christmas tree that's ugly and needs love. See? Wild.
There's a lot
yeah.
there to digest.
So look, I think at the end of the day, like, the team doesn't feel like they're that far away. And I know it's weird because, you know, what Sean says, they're 23-18 right now, right? They were 23-18 last year, the same moment, but last year they were 3 games into a 6-game win streak. This year they're 4 games into a 4-game losing streak at the same exact junction. And I'm gonna, like, this is gonna be the next topic of discussion that we're going to have. Like, how much do you think the ripple effect of trade rumors are in this team's head? Because whether it's Harrison Barnes or it's Davion Mitchell or it's Kevin Huerter, these dudes have been thrown around in every single trade. Like, everyone knows that they're available. Everyone knows that Keegan is not available and that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis are not available. So there's this weird, like, hey, the cool kids over there, they're not available in trade, but us over here, we are. And then I think another layer to this is exactly what Domantas Sabonis said after the game last night, that, like, we're a family. Like, we love each other. We're in this together. We're trying to fight through this together. We aren't losing each other in the locker room. And I think sometimes people miss that, yeah, Harrison Barnes could get traded tomorrow. And we can talk about the ramifications, what that means for Harrison Barnes and his family, and how horrible it is to pick up and move right in the middle of a season, and how you could not see your family for 2 or 3 weeks at a time because you're staying in a hotel in some other place. I mean, look, the Kings almost traded Harrison Barnes 3,000 miles away to a different country. Like, honestly, they almost traded him to the Raptors, where he would have had to pick up and move for the next 6 months or 4 months and not been, you know, around where his family is and everything else. But I think there's something about this where players like De'Aaron Fox, like, he spent 5.5 years with Harrison Barnes as, like, his big brother in Sacramento. Like, there is a tremendous amount of love and respect between the Foxes and the Barnes, right? What's gone on here, the way he conducts himself, the way he's been a leader. And I think it, like, overall, it feels like part of the dark cloud is the uncertainty to not just whether Harrison will be there anymore, but what that means to De'Aaron, or what that means to other guys in the locker room who have grown close to him or grown close to Kevin Huerter. And I think that this team is a little bit shell shocked by all of the noise on the outside. Am I crazy?
Well, you're definitely crazy. You're always crazy.
I am crazy.
I don't know. I think, look, everyone kind of digests it differently. I'd say in the instance of Harrison Barnes, having conversations with him over the course of the past 2 years about this very subject, he's like the ultimate pro in this regard, and he's like, oh, if I get traded, I get traded. Like, he doesn't. I don't think trade rumors and the uncertain future, and as someone who has been traded at the deadline before, I just don't think he's really bothered by it. I think he's just always Harrison Barnes.
So why did he have 2 points and 1 rebound and 1 assist in 22 minutes last night?
But let's not act like we haven't seen that before.
Right.
Yeah, but
I can tell you, this is like, Harrison Barnes.
Per
let's
36
like
minutes.
That's a rarity,
No,
like some, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, per 36, right? Just like so we can actually line up everybody. Harrison Barnes is 16th on the team in rebounds per game, per 36. 16th. Like, there's only 15 on the main roster. So that means he's behind multiple people that are
Right.
not on the main roster.
But James,
So
how different is that from Harrison Barnes that you've seen? Again, like some of the numbers are down, but it's Harrison Barnes. Like that's who he is. Again,
Okay.
the role he
I know,
plays
like,
on this team, it's who
2
he
years
is.
ago, he averaged 5.5 rebounds. The year before that, he was at 6.5 rebounds per game. This year,
And where is he at right now?
he's at like 2 point something. And Sasha Vezenkov, who plays
2.8.
13 minutes,
Yeah.
2.8. Sasha Vezenkov, who plays 13 minutes a night, is at 2.6.
Yeah. And when you stand out on the perimeter, you're not getting boards.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
I mean,
Sasha Vezenkov does too.
Yeah.
Like,
But no. Sasha gets into the paint. He gets into the paint. He gets a lot of them on the offensive boards too. And
Harrison definitely had been better at it before.
100%. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it's still Harrison Barnes. Like this is again, this is who he is. I mean, this is not like this is exactly where the fan frustration comes from. It's I think a lot of it ends up being, oh, he's not scoring. And I'm like, he's not rebounding, especially with this team. He needs to rebound.
There was something on your
spider.
mic.
There was a spider crawling down the arm at me.
You were so focused.
And
I thought you were looking at your pen as going, is this pen pink? Which it was.
No, I killed the spider and he fell.
I will say in someone like Kevin Huerter's case, this is something I think entirely new to him. And it comes at an area where, at a time where, this team has committed money and years to him, and he was considered to be kind of, I wouldn't say core, but definitely among the group that you want going forward. You've got him. I think core insinuates your top 3 players, and that's why I don't put him there. But core in the sense that you want him as part of your pieces going forward. You've committed years to him, and he's part of your future. And as a guy who obviously has struggled with his shooting, all of that is mental. So I think a lot of that does trickle in, that maybe this is something that, and if you ask him, he'll tell you, it's like, no, I'm human. I see all these things. It does affect you. But at the end of the day, I'm a professional, right? Like they'll all say the same thing. So in his circumstance, I'm there to buy it. In Harrison's, I don't, because to me, it's still Harrison. Like I don't think Harrison's doing anything to where I'm looking at him and going, well, that's outside of his character. He's certainly not playing up to where he should be. And I think we lost James. Oh, there he's there.
No, I'm here.
But to me, it's also like he's at the end of the year, you look at his numbers and you're like, okay, well, he had numbers that might be down, but they're still very much Harrison. Like he's not doing anything that's vastly different than what he normally does, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I pretty much agree with everything Sean said there, and don't really have much else to add. Like I get the frustration with some of Harrison's productions this year. Defensively, I've thought that he could do better. I think that specifically getting through screens is really tough for him. And when you're putting him on a guy like LeBron or guys, these bigger wings that are running pick and rolls, that can be kind of tough. But, I feel like a lot of times the HB stuff comes from the box score. And again, defensively, I will 100% acknowledge he has not been very good on that end of the floor. But often what I like to say about Harrison is, outside of those moments that you feel, is that maybe you don't feel him out there, but sometimes that's a good thing. A guy that's just like filling his role. Like I think that you feel when something is going very well for a player, and you feel when something is going very bad. And if you're just not even really noticing a guy, there's probably not that much of either, which can be a good thing in itself. Like I think that offensively, he does not make very many mistakes. He hits his open shots at a pretty good rate. He's at 39% from 3 this year, and not getting to the free throw line like he may have in previous seasons. And there's definitely aspects that I don't think have existed from last season. And again, I do think that the team would benefit from him being better or closer to what he had been before defensively, but that's been a slow recline. I think that we've seen over the last couple of years. So I get the frustration there for sure. But I don't know, like the 4 other starters put up 20 plus. And so there's only so many points to get out there to an extent. And he took 2 shots. It's not like he's going out there and chucking a bunch and not getting shots up. So I understand both aspects, but I do think there's some value in just kind of making minimal mistakes on the offensive end, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I get all of that. I do. Like, but you still have to rebound. You still have to do some of the
Yeah.
dirty work. Like his assist numbers, I'm not going to bag on him for his assist numbers, or even for that matter, his fouls, because his usage is so low at this point that it's tough for him to get an assist because he doesn't have the ball in his hands. His usage is like 11%. He's barely touching the ball at all. And I guess maybe he could call for it more or do something more, like be more active or have a conversation with his teammates about getting him involved more. But for me, it's like if you can't be effective there, then you need to find ways to be valuable on the court. And that means sometimes you got to go in and fly in for a couple of rebounds. Go get yourself a couple of buckets. And it's not like other players haven't done that. I mean, we've seen Chris Duarte do it. We've seen Sasha Vezenkov do it. Like,
Kevin
do you
Huerter.
see Trey Lyles? What's that?
Well,
Kevin Huerter this year.
Well, and again, I
Yeah.
mean, I know I point this out a lot on this podcast. We get so wrapped up in scoring. Like they scored 126 points last night. He took 2 shots. Like
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not the scoring that they need him to get buckets. I mean, I get what you're saying.
No,
I'm
I
not
don't think
picking on
I,
you,
I
James.
I agree with that. It's not the scoring as
But
much as it
I think
is.
I think people yeah.
It's not the scoring for me. It's just straight up like you got to find other ways to impact the game. And that's a
Absolutely.
problem. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't think he is.
So I think the natural question that a lot of the fan base would say after that, and by the way, I agree with you on the rebounding for sure, is should they look in a different direction? Should they? And really, Trey Lyles, I feel like, is the guy that a lot of people point towards. And I'll just say my common response to that is I'm sure that if Mike felt like that was a better option, he actually got asked very bluntly pregame about has he considered moving Harrison. And he said, of course we consider everything, but there's never been a point where he said he thought that that was the best way to go and then retracted it. If he thought that was the best way forward, he would do it. But I think that Trey sometimes has his inconsistencies as well, obviously. And that's often what I point to with Trey is that I'm not 100% sure that he's actually a better option. And that's no slight on Trey. I think that since he's kind of really gotten back into a rhythm from his extended absence at the beginning of the year from that calf injury, that he's had some solid moments. But, you look at last night, and again, he only shot the ball twice, and there is 2 assists, 3 rebounds in there, but he didn't score. And I think that defensively, I don't know that he's better than Harrison Barnes, but curious your guys' answer because I get asked it a lot of would you consider moving Trey there?
You know what stands out though is he's a little bit it seems as if he's more physical. And for a team that lacks physicality, that part sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't think Harrison lacks physicality per se, but it's just not as overt and noticeable. But I think what the broader scope of it, if you look at it from 30,000 feet or whatever, I think what it comes down to is I think Harrison Barnes is part of a rotation with De'Aaron Fox that plays to it at its maximum potential, and they try to maximize the lineups that they have. And the reason you don't see Harrison Barnes coming off the bench is for one, he's rewarded for his being available all the time. The guy doesn't miss games, and he plays very, very well with De'Aaron Fox. When with that type of lineup. So I think they try to keep each other on the floor. When they're on the floor, they try to make sure he's there with him as much as they can. But obviously, if he's not a factor, like coming down the fourth quarter of a lot of games we've seen, or Harrison only plays 20 minutes or whatever it is, and you don't see him close certain games because he's just not impacting the game that way, or someone else has it going, like Trey Lyles, then they're going to roll with the hot hand and go with what's working. But more times than not, Harrison Barnes ends up being in some of those lineups that are the more effective.
And I just pulled up those numbers real quick on that starting lineup. 349 minutes, easily the most minutes played. After that, it's 127. Starting 5, obviously, Fox, Huerter, Barnes, Murray, Sabonis. 122.6 offensive rating, 112.2 defensive rating, plus 10.5 net rating.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And like, I'm not sitting there every game going, I need more from Harrison Barnes. But what I am thinking the whole time is you got to try to do something else. And then when it comes to the Trey Lyles and Harrison Barnes, like defensive players, I think it's very clear that Harrison is more switchable than Trey Lyles. That Harrison can defend the like sometimes 2, 3, 4. And while it may not be like stellar, I think Trey is more of a guy that can defend the 4 and the 5. And so I don't think you have the versatility as a defender in Trey Lyles. And that's not a knock on Trey. He's just a big dude. And so, I don't when Mike Brown goes like to the weird lineup where it's like Alex Len or JaVale McGee with Sasha Vezenkov and Trey Lyles, like I that's a lineup that sure probably can score and rebound, but defensively, like how can you can't like, you know, keep a flow at all, especially when it's like Malik Monk playing alongside those guys. Like that's got to be like one of these shockingly bad defensive lineups that you could put together. And, so I don't know. He's got a lot of tinkering to do. And I'll just say this until the Kings have a better option, then Harrison Barnes should probably start because I have yet to see a better option like step in and walk in the door. Does that make sense? Like, I guess
Yeah.
if is some weird world where you start, Malik Monk and slide Kevin Huerter to the 3, you get smaller. You're not as physical at both positions, right? And then I don't know that that's a better idea. And I also don't know that Kevin Huerter doesn't look exactly like Harrison Barnes on the offensive end if he's stuck in that position where he's just flat out not getting any shots. So it's a problem.
By the way, that's a big positive is Huerter starting to look more like himself.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking just the 31-point game that he had as a career high last night against the Pacers, but there are games on this road trip. There are games where I'd kind of go back to the Pelicans debacle. Like I know it was a shitty game and they were awful, but it's like if there was a bright spot, he was hitting some shots. And
he found himself.
If that's what it takes to get your confidence back, great.
Yeah, I think that the Kevin Huerter situation is quietly like started to correct itself. Like he just looks like himself, right? And he doesn't have to score 31 or 28, but even like the game he had in the middle there, what was it, 10 points? He was super effective. Like you kept wondering why he wasn't on the court more. Even in that game, that's where they who was it they're playing?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Yeah, I think if you were to ask Mike Brown, I think he would have even told you like I probably should have put Kevin Huerter back in the game in the fourth quarter. He played like 4 minutes in the fourth to start it, and then you started having the turnover issues with Fox and Monk, where it just like got out of control. And I think that you would have probably liked to have seen more minutes for Kevin Huerter in that situation. But it really comes down to confidence. It comes down to him hitting his shots. And when he's hitting his shots, I don't know about you guys, but the Kings just look like a much better. They look like the Kings of last year. Outside of that, they don't look like themselves. Like it's weird that one player like hit the gravitational pull of Kevin Huerter as a shooter changes so much of the dynamic with that team. And I'm not sure that I expected it to be that way, but like when you look at the season and their offensive rating is so far off what it was last year, I think a lot of it comes down to just straight up, you know, that Huerter was missing shots and got lost there for like 2 months.
Can I add another name to that? Keegan. Yeah,
Keegan.
yeah, there you go.
He started
I
that.
say Keegan. Yeah.
He just has straightened it out earlier than Kevin did.
Yeah. And I think Keegan also started figuring out ways to impact the game differently. And Kevin has done that in spot times. Like we had like the 9 or the 10 rebound games, right? But like Kevin has slowly started to figure out like, okay, I've got to do something else to get myself on the floor. Keegan figured that out really early. Like I think Keegan, part of the shooting issue with Keegan was just straight up that they were asking him to guard everybody and his body wasn't ready for it. And I think he's adapted and he looks more like he's in better physical shape. He's more prepared to play a full 36 to 38-minute game where he's the number one option on the defensive end. And then he's like the third option on the offensive end. But I still, you guys are right. Like he didn't start the season well, and we're starting to see him round in shape. Yes.
Yeah, he's doing some things where it looks like they try to get him involved early. very early, because if he doesn't have something going, it's almost as if it has an impact on him later in the game. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I just see him very active early on in the game, and I think that's by design. I'm not sure yet.
With Keegan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like, look, I think one of the things that I'll point out too is that the ultimate goal for this team, in order for them to reach their potential, right? I think we all know what if the Kings are going to be a really, really, really good team, not this year, but next year, the year after that, we all know that the pathway there, it goes through Keegan Murray, right? It's gonna be Domas, it's gonna be De'Aaron, and it's gonna be Keegan, most likely, unless you go out and you get someone else. But sometimes, like, getting a player to that point, there are growing pains that come with it, right? You can't just expect Keegan Murray to walk in year 2 and average 18 a game on day 1 and just be spectacular. Like, I guess you can hope for that, but just
Right.
expecting it, it probably isn't gonna happen. And I think a lot of what we're seeing right now, so you guys watch all the time, like, the Kevin Huerter DHO, right? He comes off of the Demonis, Sabonis handoff at the top of the key, but he travels like 10 yards and 2 steps and clears
Literally
all
travels,
this
by the way.
space.
It's a travel
Yeah,
every time. I'm not going to lie.
is it? Okay. Either way, you can see how far he goes out, and when that happens, the entire defense starts to shift and pull towards that because he keeps going, and you're like, "Where is he going?" You see his defender, but also the other guy. That's why Domantas Sabonis is always open on the when Kevin, decides to take off and go to the rim and then find Domas. But while that's happening, on the other side of the court are usually 3 players because they do 2 players on one side and 3 on the other in this, to space the floor. It opens everything up for everybody. And then when you think of the way that Keegan Murray runs the same exact play, Keegan doesn't keep going. Keegan takes a handoff, slides in right behind Sabonis, and shoots from the top of the key. And so it doesn't have the same gravitational pull that Kevin's does. And it's just a difference in the 2 as players, but I think it's also something like when we're early in the season and they're really trying to get Keegan to be this player, it did kinda mess with the flow. You're giving up something now with the hopes that 3 months or 2 years from now, it will pay huge dividends, and I agree with the idea, but it's still sometimes it can be difficult and it can be clunky to watch because you're trying to take a kid and turn him into, a 20 plus per game scorer, and you're trying to do it on a winning team overnight. And that's just not simple.
Yeah, and I think the signs have been encouraging. I definitely agree with that. I think there's also a lot of times we're starting to see even more so that he comes off that DHO and he curls to the basket and will like take a mid range and it looks funky. I swear it looks like he's like trying to do De'Aaron's moves, but it's just a totally different body type at times, like a hard plant with his foot and fading back and things like that. Or yesterday, I thought he crossed the heck out of somebody, but apparently he pushed off just enough that was going to get called. And, there's a little bit of isolation stuff that's going on. And you just look at the mid-range numbers. He shot 15% of his shot attempts last year were mid-range. That's up to 31% this year. And he's more accurate, 37% last year, 49% this year. And it's funny because I think people will point to like, well, it's so good that De'Aaron turned his mid ranges into threes. So why do we want to take him taking more mid ranges? It's because De'Aaron spent the time getting good at the mid range to James's point that he can get to that when he needs to. And I think that's an important development for Keegan that we're starting to see more. And one other thing I'll throw in there is that Katie said on one of the broadcasts that De'Aaron joked with her that Keegan's the worst finisher in the league. And I think that is hilarious and very typical for their relationship. I'm pretty sure within 4 feet, Keegan is shooting better. Just saying. And there is a 5-inch, 6-inch size difference there between them, which definitely plays a part. But Keegan 69% at the rim this year, and De'Aaron 63. So just saying, De'Aaron, Keegan might have something to say there.
I think that you're wanting Keegan to be more exciting, and like I think a lot of people, like when you're watching, you're like, oh, that could have been really, really exciting, but that's okay. Like for me, it's like I dig Keegan's vibe as a player and as a person. Like he's just kind of, he's laid back, he's an introvert, but also on the court, he just like when he does something, you're sitting there like, huh, I didn't know he could do that. But we're doing that more and more. Like, he quietly had what, 27, 28 points and 8 rebounds yesterday. He quietly had like 28 points and 10 rebounds a couple of days before that. He's up to like 16.2 points per game. By the end of the season, I'd be really surprised if he's not over 18 points per game. He's becoming the player that they hoped he would be, and it's quietly happening while De'Aaron and Domas are putting up ridiculous stats every single night, and you kind of ignore that. Like there's 3 guys, 4 guys some nights that are having huge nights, but for most of the season, it's been the same 4 guys. It's De'Aaron, it's Sabonis, it's Fox, and it's Monk. Now we're starting to see Kevin Huerter pop into that. And if all of a sudden you start seeing like this, like 4, 5, 6 guys, the team just becomes more and more difficult to defend, which is, I like to be honest, what we saw last year. Just kind of, it's tough to compare this team to last year because they're just really, even though they're the same players, they don't have the same roles. They're totally different. Like again, the Keegan Murray role last year as like a set shooter on the perimeter versus this year as a DHO guy who's doing all this. He basically has got Kevin Huerter's like most of the plays that he ran last year. And so it's difficult. It's tough to look at Harrison Barnes and say, you averaged 15 points a game last year. Now you're at 10 and you're not doing any of the things that you did last year. But it's just a redistribution of wealth from the same like 6 or 7 dudes, which is just kind of bizarre. It's interesting. Where do we go from here? Let's go to the business of basketball.
Dun, dun, dun. I feel like Sean and I need roles when you do that.
I just wish I had like an instant replay that we used to have in radio where it had sound effects and music and all that kind of stuff.
Lame.
We have like
no.
What do you mean lame?
Like make
That'd
some
be amazing.
noise.
You're dun. You would have.
I don't know. At least I tried. Yeah. So what? No, James gets to do it different every time. No, we're not robots. Yeah. I'm over it.
You don't want AI. You want none of that.
It's funny. Kyle, my partner on the Insiders, he controls the board and he has all the buttons. I don't get to touch any of the buttons because I'll break something.
Oh, there's a reason
screw
for
something
that.
up. Oh no, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing at all, and I'm very, very cognizant of that. I'm willing to step back and say I don't touch button. No, like today, the
red one,
the computer decided to reboot right in the middle of our show to update, and I kept saying like, no, don't update, no, don't update, and it goes, I'm updating anyways. So I disappeared in the middle of the show today because the computer updated.
You were still on the air though, right? The radio portion.
We were still on the air, yeah,
Oh,
and we had to make sure that
matters. Yeah,
it was chaotic. It was chaotic for Kyle. I felt bad for him because again, I'm watching my computer. I'm like, Kyle, I think my computer is about to die. My computer's about to restart. But I don't get to touch the buttons.
Did you have Sean's computer? Because his most common excuse for being late is my computer's updating. I've never heard of somebody's computer updating more in my life.
It's wild, bro. It is wild. I don't understand.
Believe you, Sean.
Because I do it all the time. This computer, like I have 2 computers. The other one is old as shit, and I wouldn't only think the webcam attachment would not even work for it. But this one is newer, and it updates all the time. Usually they don't take long, but a lot of them tend to take a moment.
And are always at the most inopportune time, right, Brenden?
Very much
absolutely. Yeah. I derailed us. Do it again, James and Sean. Come up with something.
What do you mean?
Figure it out. I don't know.
We're gonna do
need a sec?
The business of basketball.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
That's ESPN.
No. Well, you know,
I don't know. What is happening?
You didn't even make a noise. You can't be on me.
You threw me.
God,
what is happening?
I usually always go ooh or something like that. Like it's always, I react.
Should the Kings make a trade?
Oh, here we go.
No. Let's
blow it up.
No. I think the bigger question is like we can see like we've been able to see the problems that this team has, like structurally, like how, like what pieces might work to fix this thing, right? But at this point, they just look a little lost. And do you guys think that, like, I don't know, the fragility of this team is an issue? Because it feels like they're off kilter, but then you throw in the free throw thing, which is usually like a lack of focus, or I mean, because look, I put up a video the other day. We watched De'Aaron Fox. I kept rolling until he missed, and he never missed. I think he hit 25 straight free throws. Like, it's not a mechanical issue. He knows how to shoot free throws, but then he goes out and he shoots, what was he, 3 of 7 in the game, and that's a problem. Or maybe it was 5 of 9 or whatever
3
it
of
was,
8.
but 3 of 8. Okay.
And Malik went 2 of 6, which is the crazier one.
Yeah, 2 of 6. Yeah. So, and even, I mean, that was just a mess. But
Or I'm
what
sorry,
is
I'm
going
reading
on? Like,
threes. It's 5 of 9 for De'Aaron and 1 of 6 for Malik. Sorry.
okay. How do they figure this out? How do you fix them? I guess is a question. Because I don't know if it is a trade. I don't know if it's like a coming to Jesus moment. I don't know if it's a players only meeting. But there's something that's off with this group, and I think part of it is trade deadline. I think part of it, there's other things that are happening here that are in play. But where are you guys at with, like, how do you fix them right now, whether it's trade or whether it's conversation or whatever it might be?
Uh, I think I'd love to just say I don't know, but I think speaking to a larger point is I think this team's flaws are the same as last year. Certainly, they've got some moments where you're like, okay, yeah, your free throws are terrible, or you have moments where you're turning the ball over as a team that really hasn't shown, the character trait of doing that too often. Um, I think it speaks to a frustration that they're probably not better than what they are, and obviously they've tried to focus a lot on the defensive end, and it's taken them away from that identity, that really fast-paced offensive team. I mean, they're still really good. They still can score the hell out of the ball, but they're not what they were. And I think the frustration there is you might have some people that want to go back to that style of play, but the realization that they are what they are. This is who they are. They're not the most physical team. There's a scouting report on this team. People know what the recipe is to be able to compete with the Kings, and trying to navigate those waters can be tricky. So I think they know that what they're capable of, and they know that they're a good basketball team. Going from good to great is hard. Mike Brown says it all the time. They're not great. They're just not. And I don't picture any version of this team right now as it's currently made up being that way. I think we can probably all agree there. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration from fans comes from, and maybe even internally within the roster itself, is that yeah, you're a good team. You're capable of doing some pretty good things, and you're probably capable of making a playoff run. Although I think there's a lot of people that don't believe that they would pick this team in a playoff series against most of the teams in the West. I'm not so sure there. I still think they could make a playoff run. I just don't look at them as a great team. So I think there's frustrations that come along with that. The actual realization that this is who you are, and until you make a roster change or some sort of, you know, substantial shakeup, that you're just going to continue to be that. And I think part of it is, I mean, you've got I'm trying to be careful how I say this, but with respect to, I think a lot of the things that you had question marks of, you don't really have the same questions. Like if there was a question that Keegan Murray can't duplicate the season that he had last year, going into a sophomore year, I think you have the answer to that. Keegan Murray's just fine. Keegan Murray is capable of being that guy. If there was a, hey, we signed Harrison Barnes because still might not have total belief that Keegan is totally ready for that upper echelon role, or if he can have that type of consistency. I think you have that answer. But I also think too, in signing Harrison Barnes to that deal, relatively speaking, in the NBA money terms, it was a pretty great deal for the Kings. You look at
I don't think
other.
great is a little strong. I mean,
I'll say great.
it's fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll say
He's 12 to 13% of the salary cap. That's okay.
Yeah, it's not an albatross on the books, right? And if you look at guys that did get paid in this past season, there's some contracts where you go, what the hell is that? How did that guy get that much money? Look, everything's escalating. So the point I talk about what I'm trying to get to is that money is not something that just hangs on this team. So being able to move him should be relatively simple. But can you truly get what you probably need with that contract or with that player? And I think that's at a point where, we're going to find that out in the next couple weeks, but I don't know that they can truly get what they really need with what they're willing to part with.
And I don't think that they should be in a hurry, personally.
Right.
I think
They
it's
shouldn't
fine to be a good team.
Right.
And I get the frustration from the fan base with that for sure, but growth is just not linear in the NBA. And Monty's used the wording aggressive but disciplined a lot. And he's shown that he's very disciplined. Buddy Hield was just in town last night. And how long were we talking about, or people talking about, Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley are probably out. It's just about finding the right deal. They waited a long time to get the right deal, and it ended up working out. So I think if you act out of desperation and like, we have to do something, we just can't roll with this group, that making no move is better than making the wrong move. And I feel like that gets lost a little bit sometimes. And I think that's natural for a fan base that, again, wants to see their team get better. But unless there's, some pressure coming from ownership or a reason that you believe that the locker room is messed up, there's no real reason to get desperate in my mind. And I fully believe that he's going to be aggressive. And if he thinks that there is a way that he can make this team better, not just in the short term, but in the long term, because the eventual goal is not get out of the first round. It's not, you could put all your chips in getting out of the first round and getting better this year and hamstring yourself for an eventual championship. The goal is a championship down the line. And I just think that's a slow process, and that there's reason to take your time here. Being a good team is fine. I agree with Sean. I think this team could get out of the first round, and they also could lose in the play-in, and I think that's a fine range to be in if you don't feel like there's a move that makes sense for your team, not only in the immediate, but in the future.
Yeah, and I'll add this too. When it comes to Harrison Barnes' contract, 17, 18, 19 million, right? The Kings have had problems in the past of not actually having a contract that they can trade. The fact that you have, like, I know this sounds like sometimes I get too nuanced with the salary cap, but a $17 million contract is really good for the Kings, because that means you can go out and get like a $20+ million player. You can get a $12-13 million player using that contract.
Yep.
And Harrison Barnes still has enough in the tank that someone is going to be willing to take on a player that has a 12.5% of the salary cap figure. And where we got to this summer, whereas the Kings couldn't make a trade at like going into the draft because they didn't have any contracts to trade. And you actually have to have contracts to trade in order to match salary to go with this deal or that deal or whatever, right? When they traded the Rashawn Holmes contract, at that point, there was no Harrison Barnes under contract. There was no Trey Lyles. There was no Sasha Vezenkov. There was no Alex Len or JaVale McGee. Like, all of these players, once you sign them, they become chips that you can use to go get pieces. And so, like, look, I don't think they did anything wrong with the Harrison Barnes contract. I think you can move Harrison Barnes. It just, what are you going to have to move along with Harrison Barnes to get what you want? And is there a team out there that's going to say, hey, we're okay taking 2 more years of a player who's going to be, league average and be able to start or come off the bench for us, but be a good citizen and part of what we're doing here as part of a deal. He's not an albatross. He's not some bad contract. And you can say the same about Kevin Huerter, but if he didn't sign Harrison Barnes and you still wouldn't have had any cap space, now you can package Harrison Barnes with a Kevin Huerter. So now you're at, I don't know, 36 million or 35 million, and you can go up to 40 something million as far as in a trade. Or you can package Harrison Barnes with a Trey Lyles, and now that's 25 million. You can go up to 30 million. You can go back down to 20. So like there's all of these pieces that are in play about like advanced roster construction that people have to consider. And I agree that they don't need to just run out and make a move. And, even like the Siakam deal was a bad deal for the Kings. Like just straight up, like the Siakam to Indiana is like the Sabonis deal. They were able to get their version of Sabonis, but the Kings already have a Sabonis and a Fox. And they don't have enough money to go spend $40 to $60 million on a player who may or may not want to be in Sacramento and may only want to take take a trade and take the contract because he wants the money. That's not a good position to be in, because 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when Keegan Murray needs to get paid and Malik Monk's got to get paid, now you're so far over the luxury tax you can't even breathe, and you may or may not have a great team. And so I think there are deals out there that the Kings should jump on if they become available. And there are players out there that make a lot of sense for the team. But you have to consider all of these other avenues when you're making a trade. It's not just about today. It's about 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now. And you have to do it with like a really gigantic whiteboard with everything written out and all of the different options about where you can go and where you can't. And what's your ceiling here? What's your ceiling there? And like it's a calculated risk no matter what you do. And that's why I think Monty McNair so far has proven to be the right guy, because he's very calculated. He's very smart, very organized. And although I don't love that they put their name out there for every single trade possible, it is good to have your name out there. It is good to be active. It is good, some of the time. But sometimes you also may feel what we're feeling right now in Sacramento, where a lot of people are looking over their shoulder. Like, when is it my time? When am I getting called into the principal's office, told that I'm suspended? Like, that's what it feels like. And so I think it's intriguing. We're in a cool like period of Kings basketball where the product on the court isn't where you want it to be, but it's closer than what it was before. And that there are many options for the way that this thing goes forward. And I don't know. To me, it's very interesting time to cover the Kings.
Got that right.
Yeah. Yeah, you got that right. No comment, Sean. Yeah, we got inside jokes here. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. Let's get to final thoughts. Brenden, you got any final thoughts for us?
I've enjoyed some new music recently.
Oh.
There's just a couple new albums. There's been a Kid Cudi album, Sean, maybe the 21 album I listened to a little bit. James, feel free to chime in.
I actually really love the Kid Cudi album.
Same.
I'm not gonna lie.
No idea what you're saying.
That's my absolute.
Maybe we can hum when he does the business of basketball.
I'm not doing that.
And then one a while ago is a Boz. I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name right. He's a Dreamville guy under J. Cole that I really enjoy.
Oh, okay.
If you hold tight for a minute after I do my final thoughts, I'll end the podcast with showing you something.
Oh, I don't know about that. We're on the clock. I'm on the radio in another 9 minutes.
Did you see Poor Things, Brenden? Because I know our buddy Frankie saw it. I can't wait to talk to him about it, because that's a movie that needs to be dissected.
He needs to spend time with his girlfriend.
Happy birthday to Frankie's girlfriend.
Allie.
Happy birthdays to Allie. Yes.
I
happy
don't know
birthday,
this lady,
Allie.
but happy birthday.
Yeah. Nice,
I'm actually very sad today because of the impending, well, I guess it's just happening, just Sports Illustrated absolutely dying. And look, I get it. Like it sucks. I mean, the industry and like newspapers are struggling and magazines, what they are, but just talk about something that was so prevalent in my life And one of the whole reasons I got into this, it was a somber day to see that Sports Illustrated just absolutely crumbling. And look, one would argue, if you're being funny, that Sports Illustrated died years ago, and you're probably right. But it's just to see it. It's like that I got to share some of my favorite SI covers, and Brenden, I know you've probably never picked up an SI
so
in your
many,
life.
actually. I have so many somewhere in my closet.
Yeah, I do as well. I kept them. You never threw them away. Those are things that like you would always go back to. There you go. Yeah, James, I was going to mention.
Oh yeah,
has
my bar's filled with SI covers. It's filled with them. Like I've got John McEnroe, I've got Pele, I've got the Jerry Cooney, George Foreman fight up there. I've got Mark Gastineau and Lawrence Taylor. Like I have all kinds of crazy SI covers. It's a really sad day. It's just
one of the ones
where journalism is right now. It's tough.
Yeah, and one of the ones I didn't share because I only picked 4. I mean, I obviously picked the greatest show on court with the Kings. I picked the Jordan hologram one of the Will Clark ones, and Barry Bonds. I'm Barry Bonds and you're not is phenomenal. Even those stories, I can remember them so well. But the one of the ones, James, when you talk about covers, you're an A's fan. I'm a Giants fan. Growing up, seeing Will Clark and Mark McGwire essentially in a headlock with each other. During the whole Battle of the Bay stuff was just incredible. So RIP SI.
Can I add real quick? Frankie and his girlfriend are amazing, and I hope that didn't come off in a certain type of way. That's all I got on that.
No. We also Adrian Wojnarowski just tweeted Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam are active and playing versus Portland tonight.
How about that?
Yeah, crazy. Wild. I thought Halliburton might have played last night. I was surprised when he didn't.
An actual CD, Brenden, but it's because I had it. I had it sent to me. I have a publicist friend that does a lot of stuff like that. How about that?
What album even is that?
That's the 21 Savage album.
The new one?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Autographed. Oh. Sean is cool. You are not.
Yeah, actually.
Savage American. I should give this away. I should do a giveaway.
I would love it.
Give it away to Brenden.
Yeah.
No, first of all, how dare you? I know what I'm saying is I think I have a couple more of these, and I should be able to give one away. Give one to my. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
What does it take? A Hurley hat? Like, what do we?
Yeah. I mean, he bought you a candle, Sean. Like,
yeah, actually, yeah.
That was my goddamn birthday, my guy.
Amazing. Final thoughts from James. I don't know what to make of the Oakland A's and Sacramento, the River Cats situation. As a baseball and I love baseball, first love, a huge Oakland A's fan from the time I was very young. I'm absolutely like hate ownership and what's happened there. But I also know that Sacramento is a baseball town, and that if there's ever a way that baseball could come to Sacramento and stay in Sacramento, it might be worth a gamble. And so if Vivek wants to bring that team to the River Cat Stadium for 3 years or 2 years and roll the dice that maybe something goes wrong with John Fisher, who just happens to be one of the worst business people of all time, and maybe the team gets to stay in Sacramento. Okay, maybe. Major League Baseball wants Sacramento to prove that they can be a major league city and maybe give them expansion down the road. Okay. I think there are a lot of ways that you can prove your worth here. And the one thing I would say is that I would much rather see a team relocate, 60 miles, 70 miles up the road to Sacramento from Oakland than for them to just jettison and go to Las Vegas, where it's just not the same franchise anymore. So that's my initial thought. I don't know. It might morph over the next couple of months, but I do not feel like that team is already relocating. This is you trying to figure out if there's a way you can prove you're a Major League Baseball city. So maybe you can get a team down the road, whether it's the A's or someone else. So I think that's all I have on that final thought.
Yeah, you don't like the idea that it's a means to an end, and some fans who are in their feelings about seeing them help the process to get to Vegas, because I don't truly believe in that.
And that they're going to Vegas?
No, I don't truly believe that doing that, like the belief that, oh, you're only helping them to get to Vegas. It's like, no. Sacramento has its own motivations to do that.
No, I don't believe that they're only doing this just to get him to Vegas. And if
Right.
that's the case, then shame on you, Vivek. But I don't think that's the case. So, all right, we got to wrap this thing up. I've got to go get on the radio because that's all I do is talk on the radio and talk on podcasts. It seems like a lot of talking. That's what. Oh boy, I don't want to talk
Where's
about
that little
cameras.
violin we're looking for, Brenden?
Just like
There it
yapping.
is.
That.
There's his
Yeah.
smallest violin. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you're still watching us, please give us a thumbs up. Give us a rating and review if you get an opportunity. Jump on board with the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to support everything we do here. We'll try to be a little bit more regular. It's been pretty hectic over the last couple of weeks. We have. It has been a little difficult over the last couple of weeks to have 2 or 3. I had to have 2 episodes a week. So,
Yeah.
but
Niners or Packers?
Niners.
What type
Okay.
of question?
Just checking.
Sam,
What's
hell
wrong
kind of
with you?
question is that? All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by PrizePicks. Jump on board with PrizePicks. It's cool. It's fun. It's a lot. I'm having a good time with it. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you very soon.